Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into submodalities.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
It's kind of like, having the secret code book for how your mind works,
Yeah.
and maybe even more importantly, like how to kind of reprogram it. And our guide for this journey is Richard Bandler and Will MacDonald's book, An Insider's Guide to Submodalities.
It's amazing how just these subtle, distinctions in
Yeah.
our senses, these submodalities, can make such a big difference in how we experience, like, literally everything.
So I think maybe the best way to illustrate this is to jump right into an example from the book.
Okay.
So remember Jessica, the little girl who was terrified of snakes.
Right. And it's so interesting because, like, no amount of, logical reasoning could change her phobia.
Right.
Just telling her that snakes were harmless didn't do anything.
No, and that's what's so fascinating about this, is that it wasn't until Bandler started working with her submodalities that things started to shift. He had her imagine the snake, and then he guided her to kind of adjust the size and distance of that mental image.
And just by tweaking these, what seemed like really small details, her fear started to melt away.
Yeah.
It's like they're not just passive perceptions, they actively shape our emotions.
So this is what's so empowering about it, right? If we can learn to control these knobs and dials, then we can literally change how we feel about things. But how does this actually work?
Okay, so you know the five senses, right?
Yeah,
Sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell.
of course.
Submodalities are like the fine-tuning within each of these. So like within the visual sense, you have brightness, color, size, distance, even whether an image is moving or still.
Okay, so it's like taking those basic senses and adding a whole other layer of detail.
Yeah, exactly.
But how do we actually pinpoint these submodalities? I mean, are we supposed to just like walk around all day analyzing everything?
No, it's not about, constant analysis, but just kind of developing this awareness, this heightened awareness. And the book gives some exercises to help with this, like comparing two different memories, one where you felt really confident and one where you felt unsure of yourself.
Oh, okay. So by comparing those two memories, I could start to see some patterns in my submodalities.
Exactly.
So maybe the confident memory is always brighter and closer, while the unsure memory is dimmer and further away.
Exactly. And once you've kind of, identified these patterns, you can actually start to consciously adjust them. So imagine taking that dim, distant memory of feeling unsure and gradually brightening it, bringing it closer, making the colors more vivid.
So it's not about like positive thinking. It's about tweaking these underlying submodalities to change the entire feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And what's really great about this is that it can be applied to any area of life.
Yeah.
Overcoming fears, boosting your motivation, even changing like really deep beliefs.
So how do we actually use this submodality stuff to change a belief? Like, let's say I have this belief that I'm not good enough.
Okay, so first you need to kind of explore how that belief manifests in your internal world. Is it like a visual image, an internal voice, a feeling in your body? And then identify like the submodalities of that representation. So is the image like dim and blurry? Is the voice harsh? Is the feeling heavy and constricted?
Okay, so once I've done that, once I've identified those submodalities, then I can start to experiment with them.
Yeah, exactly. So contrast those submodalities with how you'd imagine feeling if you did believe you were good enough.
Okay.
So maybe that's like a bright, clear image, a supportive inner voice, and a feeling of like lightness in your body.
So it's almost like replacing a weak signal with a stronger one. By amplifying the submodalities of the belief I want to have, I can, weaken that old limiting belief.
Yeah.
This is pretty amazing stuff.
And what's even more remarkable is that these submodality shifts actually happen like all the time naturally in our life. Think about falling in love. Suddenly everything seems brighter and more vibrant.
Go ahead.
That's because those submodalities associated with love, have kicked in.
So submodality work is about like consciously tapping into that power and directing it.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this could be a real game changer.
It is. And we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore, specific techniques like anchoring and the swish pattern, and even like more advanced applications like working with submodalities in the trance state.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's dive into some of those techniques and applications. But first, I want to hear from you, our listeners. What comes to mind when you think about your own submodalities? What aspects of your experience would you want to adjust? Share your thoughts on our website and we'll be back to explore the practical side of submodalities. Welcome back, everyone. Now that we've kind of gotten our feet wet with submodalities, let's look at some of the techniques that Bandler and MacDonald give us in the book to actually use this stuff.
Yeah, there's so many, cool techniques to choose from.
Right.
But I think one that really shows like how powerful submodalities can be is what they call change history.
Change history. Okay, so break that down for me.
Okay, so imagine there's a feeling you'd like to change. Like maybe you want to feel less anxious in social situations.
Right.
The change history technique has you pick like 3 specific memories that have to do with that feeling.
So like one where I'm really anxious, one where I'm just a little anxious, and one where I'm totally at ease.
Exactly. Yeah. And then this is where it gets really interesting. Yeah. You compare the submodalities of each memory, paying attention to how the experience is different in each one.
So I might notice that in the really anxious memory, like the people around me seem really close, and the sounds are louder, and my chest feels tight. And then in the comfortable memory, everyone's like further away, the sounds are softer, and there's more space in my chest.
That's a perfect example.
Okay.
And by comparing those submodalities, you can really start to like see how your emotional responses work. You might find there's like a pattern. Maybe the more anxious memories are brighter and closer, and the comfortable ones are dimmer and further away.
Wait, so you're telling me that just by understanding these patterns, I can change how I feel in those situations?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
That's incredible.
So once you've figured out those key submodality shifts, you can use that knowledge to like change the feeling itself. So let's say you take that memory where you were really anxious.
Okay.
And in your mind, you start to make the image dimmer, push those people further away, make the sound softer, and give yourself more space in your chest.
So basically, I'm like rewiring my emotional response by changing those submodalities instead of just trying to force myself to relax.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just for anxiety either.
Right.
Bandler talks about using this technique for all sorts of things like phobias, bad habits, even helped somebody get over their fear of snakes.
Wow. That's
by changing how big and how close the snake looked in their mind.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
It seems like submodalities give us so much control over how we feel inside. But what about, times where it's not just a feeling I want to change, but an actual like belief? Can submodalities help with those really deep beliefs that are holding me back?
Okay. There's a whole chapter in the book about changing a belief with submodalities.
Okay.
And it's actually pretty similar to what we just talked about.
Okay.
So let's say you have a belief like I'm not creative. You'd first have to figure out how you experience that belief inside.
So is it a visual image? Is it something I hear in my head? Or a feeling in my body, something like that.
Exactly. What's the internal representation and what are the submodalities connected to each of those?
Okay, so let's say for me, it's this tight feeling in my chest and this voice saying, "You're not good enough."
Okay.
What would I do then?
So the key is to compare those submodalities with how you would feel if you did believe you were creative.
Okay.
So what would that look like? Sound like, feel like? Maybe you'd feel this like expansive energy in your body. You'd see this bright, colorful image of your ideas, and you'd hear a voice that was like, you have so much potential.
Okay, so instead of trying to like fight that old belief, I'd be focusing on amplifying the submodalities of the belief I want. It's almost like I'm training my mind to experience things in a different way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And as you practice embodying those new submodalities, the old belief just starts to fade away. It's like shining a light into a dark room. The darkness can't be there when there's light.
This is all so fascinating.
Yeah.
But if these submodality shifts, they can just happen naturally, like you said, with falling in love. Do we even need to work with them consciously?
Well, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And while they can happen, organically, consciously, understanding submodalities lets us take control and make those changes happen the way we want them to.
Oh, okay.
It's like learning how to drive instead of just being a passenger.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some specific techniques for working with submodalities.
Okay.
One that comes to mind is anchoring. Can you talk about how that works?
Yeah, so anchoring is all about like connecting a certain feeling or state with a physical sensation.
Okay.
It's like a shortcut to access that state whenever you want.
So, like, if I wanted to feel more confident before I gave a presentation, I
Mm.
could create an anchor by, like, associating that feeling with squeezing my thumb and forefinger together.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm thinking about a time when I felt really confident.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then anytime you need a boost of confidence, you can just squeeze your fingers and you feel it.
That's amazing.
It's like you have your own personal power button for any emotion you want.
Okay, so what about that other technique you mentioned, the swish pattern? That one sounded really interesting.
Oh yeah, the swish pattern is really powerful for breaking bad habits and replacing them with, good ones. It's basically rapidly switching an image you don't want with an image you do want, and using those submodalities to make that new image super compelling.
Okay, so how would that work? Like, let's say I have a habit of eating sugary snacks when I'm stressed.
Right.
How could I use the swish pattern to stop doing that?
So first you'd have to figure out what image is triggering you to want those snacks.
So like a picture of a cookie or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then you have to pick a different picture to replace it with.
Okay.
Like a picture of you going for a walk or drinking some tea.
All right, so I've got my two pictures.
Mm-hmm.
How do the submodalities come in?
Okay, so this is the really cool part.
Okay.
You're going to use the submodalities to make that good picture really appealing, while at the same time making the old picture, less appealing. So you could make that picture of the cookie like small and gray and blurry.
Okay.
And you could make the picture of you going for a walk big and bright and really close up.
So it's not about willpower then. It's about changing how I see things. Like literally to make me want the good choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm changing how my brain works.
Yeah, you're rewiring those automatic responses.
This is amazing.
And the more you practice, the better it works.
Okay.
You're strengthening those new pathways in your brain.
This is all really empowering.
It is. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what we can do with submodalities.
Yeah.
But before we get into even more techniques, I want to hear from you, our listeners.
Yeah.
Have you tried any of these techniques in your own life? What's worked for you? We'll be right back to talk about even more ways to unlock the power of your mind with submodalities.
Ollie. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered some really cool techniques for working with submodalities.
Yeah.
But Bandler and MacDonald, they don't stop there. They take us into some pretty fascinating areas, these advanced applications that almost seem like superpowers.
It's like they're saying, okay, now that you get the basics, let's really get creative with this.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go beyond those, basic distinctions and really play with the nuances of our experience. So one that really stood out to me was this idea of developing idiosyncratic anchors. It sounds so like personal.
It is. It's all about like finding those triggers, that are already connected to these powerful states inside of you. And those anchors could be anything, really. Physical sensations, gestures, even like images in your mind or sounds.
So instead of just like using any old anchor, I'd be looking for things that already have like a deep meaning for me.
Exactly. Yeah. The book has this great exercise for this, where they have you like imagine this peak experience, a time when you felt like incredibly resourceful, maybe totally in the zone, super confident.
Okay.
And as you're reliving that experience, they say pay attention to everything.
So like if I was thinking about a time when I was just in this amazing creative flow, I might notice this warmth in my chest, or this feeling of like expansiveness, maybe even a specific song playing in my head or something.
Yeah, exactly. And those little things, those are your gold. By anchoring them either physically, by touching a part of your body, or just mentally by recreating that feeling in your mind, you're creating this trigger that can like instantly bring you back to that resourceful state.
So it's like having this secret weapon I can use anytime I need to get into that zone.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing.
And it doesn't have to be just for creativity either.
Yeah.
Imagine like an athlete getting ready for a big competition.
Yeah.
They could like figure out what it feels like to be totally calm and focused, right before the game. Maybe they notice that their jaw tightens a little and their breathing slows down.
Right.
By anchoring those little cues, they can get into that state whenever they need to, even if they're super nervous.
They'll feel like they always have access to their best performance.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brilliant. It seems like this could be useful in so many areas of life.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's another advanced application I wanted to ask you about. It's this submodalities of the trance state. It sounds like we're getting into some pretty deep stuff here.
Yeah, this is where things get really, really interesting.
Okay.
We're talking about using submodalities to get into and deepen those trance states, those states of like heightened awareness that you might experience during meditation or right before you fall asleep.
Okay.
So the idea is if we can understand the submodality shifts that happen naturally during those states,
Right.
then we can learn how to use them intentionally.
To create those states, you mean?
Yeah, and to use them for growth, for change.
Okay, so how would we do that?
So one of the big things that happens in trance is this shift from focusing on the outside world to focusing inward. As you go deeper, your mental images might get like dimmer and less detailed.
Okay.
And your internal sensations, your feelings, those become more vivid.
Oh, I think I get it.
It's like turning down the volume on the outside world and turning up the volume on what's going on inside.
It's like those times when you're so into a book, that you completely forget where you are.
Yeah, exactly. You're totally absorbed in that world.
So if we're consciously adjusting those submodalities, like the brightness of our mental images or the size or the distance, we can make that trance experience even stronger.
Yeah, and access these different levels of awareness.
Okay, so the book also talks about how rhythm can help induce those trance states.
Right.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So they have this exercise called rhythmic calibration.
Okay.
And it's basically about practicing matching the rhythms of another person. So like their breathing or their movements or even their thoughts.
We're like syncing up with their energy.
Yeah, exactly. And it can create this really deep connection.
It seems like that could be really useful in therapy, but also just, in everyday life with our friends and family.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
This is all just incredible. It really seems like we've only just begun to understand what we can do with submodalities.
It's really just the beginning.
We've talked about changing our feelings, our beliefs, our behaviors, and now we're going even deeper into these trance states and higher levels of awareness.
It's pretty amazing stuff.
It really is.
And I think the most important thing to remember is that, you have the power to create your own experience.
Yeah.
When you understand how submodalities work, you can shape your inner world and create a reality that matches your dreams, your goals.
That's such a powerful message.
It is.
And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into an insider's guide to submodalities.
Okay.
We hope you've learned some cool things and that you're feeling inspired to keep exploring this fascinating world.
Definitely.
Remember, the journey of self-discovery, it never ends.
Okay.
There's always more to learn, more to experience, and more to create with the power of your own mind.
That's right.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep expanding your awareness.
Thanks for listening, everybody.